Today, we are going to talk about immigration because a few weeks ago I got a request from one of my viewers to just do a video on my general thoughts on immigration. So I decided to look at 5 arguments I often come across on the whole immigration debate. I should probably start off by saying that I am pro-immigration. I think immigration is good. I think we should make it easier for people to come here. We should probably make it a lot more difficult for people to become citizens. But I generally am favorable toward more immigration. And I want to start off. So you see the 5 arguments. We got taking jobs from Americans. They're going to take our jobs, you guys.
Blow it out your ass.
Got immigrants. We can't let in immigrants. They're going to take our jobs. They might be a drain on the welfare states. You often hear that they might cost the American taxpayers money. There are dangerous drug cartels in South America and Mexico, and they're making things difficult around the border. So we need more immigration controls. We need to build a wall, make sure people who are coming in are not members of cartels or gangs. Also, demographic change. They're changing the ethnic makeup of the United States. You hear that a lot. And also election consequences. Oh, the only reason why those dastardly Democrats want to let more people in is because immigrants vote Democrat and Democrats just want the vote. So let's take this one by one. Let's start off with they're going to take American jobs. If we let in immigrants, they're just going to take American jobs. They might even drive down wages for existing jobs. And I think it's first important to note, there's a lot to be said on this issue, but it's most important to note that nobody owes you a job. Nobody owes anyone a job. Your existence does not place a claim on other people. Nobody owes you a job. Nobody owes you an opportunity or a means at making a living. But in the context of immigration, living in Southern California, LA for about 8 years, occasionally when I drive to a place like Home Depot, I sometimes see people hanging out in the parking lot who are presumably immigrants. They're looking for work. They're looking for construction work. And I don't see it all the time. But whenever I see people hanging out, presumably immigrants in a Home Depot parking lot, I often think, man, these people, they're the real trailblazers of our time, coming to America, just looking for opportunity, trying to cut their teeth on anything they can get their hands on. These people are more American. These people are much more American than U.S.-born brats who sit around and they expect, they're sitting around waiting for some populist, some wannabe central planning politician to twist the arms of other Americans into providing them a job by, trying to punish American companies with tariffs for outsourcing, trying to build a wall to keep immigrants out. Maybe they're looking for handouts, but either way, they're not looking for work. They're looking for politicians to solve their problems for them. But, a lot is made about, immigrants. They're taking our jobs. They're taking our jobs. But not enough is made about how immigrants create jobs. According to multiple sources, about half of America's Fortune 500 companies, usually between 40 to 50%, depending on which study you read, were founded by immigrants or children of immigrants. This is also according to Brookings. Almost half of Fortune 500 companies were founded by American immigrants or children. I think this is true of Steve Jobs. I think he was the child of an immigrant. I think Jeff Bezos is the child of an immigrant. Nikola Tesla, the great innovator, inventor Nikola Tesla, came from Central Europe. Ayn Rand, our hero Ayn Rand, she was an immigrant. She probably created a lot of jobs and opportunities by writing best-selling novels and giving speeches and whatnot. I myself, I know this is admittedly anecdotal evidence, but I myself have had many jobs at businesses that were owned and started by immigrants. One job in particular was at a large pizza chain The franchisee whose owner was an immigrant, and I remember him one day telling me his life story during a slow day, had me mop the floors, was telling me about how he came to America from India with nothing, and for 2 years straight, he worked 90 hours a week, cutting pizzas, delivering pizzas, until he saved every penny he had, until he could afford to buy the location he worked at. Now he owns, I think, 5 or 6 locations. Now he employs many Americans. One of the first jobs I had was at a liquor store in Detroit that was owned by immigrants from Iraq. So yeah, immigrants, you can say they take a lot of jobs. They also create a lot of jobs. Also, according to Brookings, according to another piece, a lot of the so-called jobs that immigrants take are jobs that most Americans would be unwilling to do in the first place. According to Brookings Senior Fellow Institute Vonda Felbaugh-Brown, many of the jobs occupied by undocumented workers in the U.S. are physically demanding jobs that Americans do not want, such as gutting fish or working on farm fields. But then you go to the other end of the spectrum. A lot of immigrants end up working high-skilled jobs. According to this article from Reuters, more than 1 in 4 doctors in the United States were born in another country, and a new study suggests that many nurses, dentists, pharmacists, and home health aides are also immigrants. They assessed this on a study of 160,000 healthcare professionals. They analyzed U.S. Census data. 29% of physicians were born in other countries. 7% were not U.S. citizens. Roughly 24% of dentists were immigrants to the U.S., and 4% were not citizens. I think this outpaces the population of immigrants in the United States, which I think is at about 47 million. Again, these are high-skilled jobs. These are services that I would love to have more of. I would love to have more doctors. You also see this in engineering. There's a lot of data about how a lot of engineers and people who come from the STEM field are immigrants. So, and which I think is wonderful. If Americans don't want to do, hard labor work like gutting fish and working on farms, or high-skilled labor like healthcare professionals and engineering, then I say, bring in more people to do those jobs. I think it's absolutely wonderful. But most importantly, nobody owes anyone a job. Moving on to number 2, they might be a drain on the welfare state. They might cost American taxpayers money. And now, according to one study I came across from Cato Institute from Alex Naurestad and Robert Orr, illegal immigrants are ineligible for entitlement and means-tested welfare programs besides emergency medical care. But also this study concludes by saying that while it's hard to assess, it can be complicated to assess these numbers, that all immigrants consume 39% fewer welfare benefits relative to all natives, largely because they are less likely to receive Social Security retirement benefits and Medicare. Immigrants consume 27% fewer benefits relative to natives with similar incomes and ages. So I think it is the case that native-born Americans consume a lot more welfare than immigrants do. But all that aside, because there's been a lot of literature and debate on the numbers over this issue, I have a better solution on this issue. If you're that concerned about immigrants potentially draining the welfare state, our beloved, wonderful welfare state, I think I have a better solution than building walls, restricting immigration, and that is to phase out the welfare state. A lot of these anti-immigration folks, why are they suddenly concerned about wealth redistribution? Why does wealth redistribution suddenly become this high crime the minute that foreign-born people begin to accept it? I really hate to play the whataboutism card here, but man, when you see all the recipients of welfare, like deadbeat parents, here you go, Here's your allowance. Institutions like NPR and PBS, here you go. Here's some cash. Do you run a failed bank or a failed automotive company? Oh, here's some money for a bailout. We're going to lend you some money. Do you want to put solar panels on your roof? Here's some cash. Are you a farmer who went bankrupt because of the last president's trade war that destroyed your overseas markets? Here's a few $1 billion in bailouts. Do you want to build a new sports facility for the local professional sports team? Here's a few $100 million. Here you go. But then when it comes to people born in another country, it's like, oh, what's this? You want to bring your kids to America and enroll them into a local public school? Sorry, Isabella. I mean, we got to draw the line somewhere.
You absolutely suck!
So I would say, instead of worrying about how much money they're going to be a drain on our wonderful welfare state, better solution, phase out the welfare state. Which brings me to point number 3, drug cartels. This is a legitimate concern. I think the drug cartels, they are powerful, they are dangerous. I'm sure they are a much bigger problem for border states and cities near the border. But like with the welfare state, I have a better solution than building walls and screening people, and that is to legalize drugs.
You're goddamn right.
Guess that drop is fitting considering that it's Walter White who was the meth kingpin in Breaking Bad. Anyway, which should happen anyway. We should legalize drugs, end the war on drugs anyway, because one, if someone wants to ruin their life by abusing dangerous, potentially addictive drugs, they want to snort cocaine and shoot heroin, they have every right to. And number 2, and this is admittedly selfish on my part, but I don't really want you goons and you wannabe philosopher kings to raise my taxes, take money out of my paycheck, my bank account, so that you can hire more dudes with guns and badges to enforce these stupid-ass drug laws. You know, if someone wants to smoke crack, if they want to shoot hair, they're going to do it anyway. And this notion that we're going to stop people from smoking crack, doing dangerous drugs by hiring some more people with guns to shoot crack pipes out of their hands? It's insane.
That's just not smart.
But one of the consequences of the war on drugs and drug laws is the fact that it gives organized crime syndicates a market in which they can make money. We saw this during alcohol prohibition, where crime went through the roof as organized crime and mafia families became richer and more powerful than ever. And when they do that, they tend to invest in high-grade artillery in case they have to fight territorial wars, turf wars, fending off law enforcement. And when Prohibition ended, a lot of these organized crime syndicates either faded into oblivion, faded away, or they had to reinvest their money in more legitimate means, like hotels, restaurants, and casinos. You know, some people, you might react to this by saying, oh my God, I can't believe you think it's okay for people to shoot heroin and smoke crack and do other dangerous drugs. Well, first of all, I don't think it's okay. I just don't think it should be illegal. But people are going to do it anyway, and you don't have a right to take up arms, use your guns in effort to stop people from doing drugs you don't want them to do, which means you don't have the right to delegate such authority to the government, to the states. And I think over $1 trillion has been spent over the last 5 decades on the war on drugs. Tens of billions of dollars are spent each year on the war on drugs, on enforcing the war on drugs. People are still doing drugs despite all of the PSAs, all of the education programs, all of the awareness programs in schools, and increased law enforcement. People are still doing it. And if people are going to do it, I'd rather them go to a legitimate business like a pharmacy, maybe a kiosk or something, rather than turning to a gang or drug cartels. Now, you notice the last 3 issues, drug laws, welfare state, taking jobs. It's often said that government controls begets more government controls. When government intervenes in areas where it should not, it ends up creating problems in which politicians demand more government controls to address the problems that other government controls created. You see this somewhat with jobs because the mixed economy, the regulatory state, the welfare state destroys, it makes it harder to open a business, to innovate, to create businesses that might create jobs and opportunities. I think it's more clear, though, with the welfare state and the drug laws. Because once the government gets in the business of redistributing money, now you've given legitimacy to people who want to control immigration. Like, look, people might come in and they might be a drain on the welfare state. They might destroy our precious welfare state, our wonderful welfare state. They might cost American taxpayers money. So now we need to build walls and restrict immigration. You bring the government in the realm of drugs, making certain drugs illegal. I mean, even marijuana is still illegal federally, even though there's been a lot of progress made with cannabis over the last decade or so. But, okay, now this has resulted in more dangerous, empowered, stronger drug cartels and organized crime syndicates. So instead of saying, you know what, maybe we should get government out of the business of redistributing wealth and making drugs illegal, maybe we should free up these areas. But no, instead, we got to build walls and control immigration more. Government controls begets more government controls. This brings me to point number 4, and that is demographic change. I did a whole video about this a couple years ago. I think actually it was just last year. It was called Demographics Don't Matter, where I respond to another video that from someone who was obsessing about demographic change. Woo! People who obsess over demographic change, they often take things like the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, which, as you can see, according to Wikipedia, it was the act that removed de facto discrimination against Southern and Eastern Europeans, Asians, as well as other non-Northwestern European ethnic groups from American immigration policy. If you pay attention to these demographic dorks, they see this act as the major turning point. They see this as the beginning of the end of America, because the demographics dorks, they don't think what made America great was free markets or freedom or innovation or men of the mind innovating and creating wealth. No, they think what made America great, and I'm not making this up if you pay much attention to them, they think what made America great was the fact that the demographic was largely made up of white descendants of Europeans. They think demographics are destiny, which is ridiculous. Again, watch my whole video on it, but I think just by looking at a region like Korea, which was split up in two in the 1950s, North and South Korea, both have the same, ethnic makeup. North Korea, now South Korea is doing pretty good. It's more of a free market, mixed economy. But North Korea, they embraced communism. And as a consequence, it is a nightmarish hellhole.
No surprise there.
I think a case like that debunks this whole notion, this ridiculous notion that demographics are destiny. This whole issue of demographics is often pushed by white nationalist types and other people who are obsessed over race. And I think these are the people that are ultimately driving the anti-immigration mentality, because they're not just concerned about illegal immigration. They're concerned about all immigration. They want to restrict immigration across the board. What do I mean by that? Do I mean that everyone who wants some form of immigration control is motivated by race or is a racist? No, I just addressed 3 arguments. They have nothing to do with race. They have to do with economics and crime. But the demographics dorks, they are mostly concerned about white demographics getting displaced. And if you don't believe me, let's take a look at someone like Charlie Kirk, who just a couple years ago, he was saying stuff like, Charlie Kirk had always had bad views on immigration, particularly illegal immigration. But he said, hey, look, if someone comes to America and studies, if they develop a skill in STEM, once they graduate, we should staple their green card behind their diploma and make sure that they employ the skills that they learned and developed in America, because it doesn't make sense to just have them come get their education in America and then just go employ their skills in another country, which is good. I agree with Charlie Kirk on that issue. I'd play the video.
From a United States university with a...
But as you can see, the audio is really bad. So what happened with Charlie Kirk was back in late 2019, which is what this video is from, Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk, they started to get challenged by other people on the right, the white nationalist types, the traditional conservative types, people who call themselves the Groypers. They started showing up to Turning Point USA events to challenge Charlie Kirk and whom they consider conservative Inc. And one of those issues was immigration. They don't like that Charlie Kirk is pro-immigration when it comes to stapling green cards to diplomas. But then Charlie Kirk got a little pushback from his good friend, Tucker Carlson.
The program allows foreign students who studied American universities to stay in the country after they graduate. In other words, we're just going to staple a green card to their diploma. You probably heard that phrase recently.
Yeah, Tucker is literally calling out Charlie Kirk. And I remember this happened at the time, but Charlie Kirk immediately backtracked off this point. Now, I couldn't find the video of this, but I found a few Groyper websites that, they claimed victory. This is from November 12, 2019. Charlie Kirk now opposes stapling green cards to diplomas. So right here, we see Charlie Kirk immediately getting pushed back on immigration from demographic, race-obsessed losers. But then it gets worse, because recently, just a few weeks ago, Charlie Kirk had this to say.
Amazing patriots in the great state of Texas, and I know so many amazing patriots in the great state of Texas, and I love Texas, that have been waiting and are willing for this moment. Deputize a citizen force, put them on the border, give them handcuffs.
Yeah, deputize American citizens and send them to the border to control the border. This is what Charlie Kirk is now saying about immigration.
Get it done. Sure, that's dramatic. You know what's dramatic? The invasion of the country.
Invasion of the country?
We're going to talk more about that. We're going to talk about how the other side has openly admitted that this is about bringing in voters. They want and they like, and honestly, diminishing and decreasing white demographics in America.
You hear that, folks? You hear what cheesy Charlie is concerned about these days?
White demographics in America.
He is concerned that the other side wants to decrease
and honestly diminish and decreasing white demographics in America.
Apparently, this is of grave concern to Charlie Kirk. Now, as an aside, I think the obsession over illegal immigration is somewhat of a red herring, especially when you consider that the Trump administration, even before COVID, as you can see this from 2018, the Trump administration sought to restrict H-1B worker visas. And the Trump administration, they did have success in cutting legal immigration to the United States. I can maybe get that there's an element of, look, we're America, this is a nation of laws, and people ought to respect the law. Okay, then I say punish people who break the law accordingly. And people talk about illegal immigration like it's this high crime, when it's not. So this notion that we have to build a wall to prevent this high crime, it's like saying that because jaywalking is illegal, that we need to prevent jaywalking by building big fences around every road in America.
That's just not smart.
And as Charlie mentioned, this is about, voting, which I'm about to get to in a second. But if the concern about illegal immigration is voting, which from what I see, they don't vote, I would say then pass a law that says if you're convicted of crossing over into America illegally, then you don't get to apply for citizenship for, 10 years, 20 years. Maybe pass a law that says if you're here illegally and if you come forward now by applying, that we'll issue a visa for you to stay here legally, and then maybe you can apply for citizenship in 10 years. But again, people act like coming to America illegally is this high crime. And I say if they're otherwise law-abiding citizens who take care of their own business, I say let them stay. Also, with this notion that, demographics are culture, they're not, but as far as American culture is concerned, if people come here, they should be expected to assimilate, learn the language, respect American laws and customs. This is the land of the free. If you come here, you're expected to take care of your own business and pursue your own happiness. Now on to, finally, number 5, election consequences. You saw this with the Charlie Kirk clip I just played. A lot of people think it's all about the votes. Oh, Democrats, they just want to increase immigration just so that they can get more votes. Yaron Brook did a really good video on this issue. Yaron Brook. He did a good video on this issue where he responds to Tucker Carlson. I recommend checking that out, and I will put that in the description when I get this on YouTube. But I'm going to take this in a different direction. I'm not sure that Democrats really need much help winning elections when so many native-born Americans are passionate Democrat voters. Just saw it here in California. I remember reading a couple weeks ago after the recall election that goofy-ass Gavin Newsom, the Democrat, got a lot of support from educated white liberals in California. So, again, this notion that demographics is destiny is just insane. But, people, they claim that Democrats, they just want to let more people in just for the sake of winning elections, when I can't help but wonder, aren't Republicans guilty of the same thing by using this as a reason to control immigration? Why should I fall for this cynical appeal when Republicans nakedly are using the same argument for controlling immigration? Why can't I just say, well, the only reason why Republicans like Tucker Carlson want to control immigration is so that Republicans can win future elections? And if this is such a big deal, shouldn't Republicans maybe, I don't know, try to appeal to immigrant voters rather than treating them as these, criminals, threat, invaders, they're taking our jobs? Or maybe just try to appeal to voters in general, because the message I take away from all of this anti-immigration rhetoric is that Republicans have a shitty, losing agenda, and the only way they can hope to win elections is by restricting immigration. You guys know what else creates Democrat voters? History curricula in public schools that talk about how the Great Depression was caused by capitalism run amok, and that it was the brilliant economic policies of Franklin Delano Roosevelt that rescued the American economy. That the Gilded Age of American history was not this incredible a period of economic growth and innovation and progress and expansion, but rather this shameful period. The Gilded Age was this shameful period in American history. It was miserable, where greedy robber barons just created a bunch of big, scary monopolies to squeeze the workers and consumers. And it was not until the heroic President Teddy Roosevelt rode in on his dumbass bull moose to save the day with his trust busting and his business regulations. And then after he was done, the wonderful Woodrow Wilson picked up where Roosevelt left off as the progressive era paved the way for the welfare state and the regulatory state in America. One may say that the public school serves as an embodiment for the double standard of America's supposed free market capitalist system, and that many argue that the institution is necessary for educating Americans to make sure no American gets left behind, to make sure that no child gets left behind.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
And, the mission of the public school is to prepare everyone in America for adulthood, to prepare everyone for the free market, that the same free market that cannot also be trusted to educate Americans in the first place.
Oh, you absolutely suck!
And sure, conservatives are becoming increasingly concerned with education, but from what I see, too many conservatives, they still love the idea of public education. They just want to ban critical race nonsense and bring God back into the schools. And I think this is where the right loses the battle, or one of the areas where they lose the battle. They look like a bunch of buffoons with their anti-immigration agenda. The right wants to claim the mantle of being pro-America, America-loving, freedom-loving, free markets, founding fathers. They love the founding fathers and the Constitution and all that good stuff. America is the greatest country there ever was and ever is. Oh, but if you want to let more people in? No, we can't have that. America, we're the land of opportunity. But we only have so much opportunity. You got to slow down with this immigration talk. We only have so many jobs and opportunities here in America. That's right. We love America so much, and we are so dang proud of this country. And we have nothing but confidence in America's ability to grow economically and thrive and prosper. But for the love of God, please stop letting more people in.